The moment Jerry Roberts opened his apartment door at 11:47 p.m., the smell hit him first. Not the usual stale air and unwashed dishes. Lemon polish, garlic, simmering tomato sauce. And standing in his cramped kitchen, wearing a black apron over a $3,000 suit, was Juan Gonzalez. The Juan Gonzalez Jerry had expected an eviction notice taped to his door. Maybe another collection agency letter. He had even half expected to find his daughter's goldfish floating in its bowl after 3 days of him forgetting to feed it. He did not expect the city's most feared crime lord to be scrubbing his stovetop. The man whose name made prosecutors retire early. The man whose photograph hung in every precinct in the state with a caption that read, "Do not approach alone." That man was in Jerry's kitchen, humming something that sounded suspiciously like a lullaby, with yellow dish gloves on his hands. And what happened when their eyes met? What Juan said next? No father, no matter how desperate, could have been ready for it. Before continuing the story, please consider giving this video a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories to you. Everyone who had ever heard the name Juan Gonzalez knew one thing: he did not knock. He did not ask permission. He did not wait for invitations. Doors opened when he arrived. Rooms cleared when he entered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when his shadow fell across a threshold. That was why every muscle in Jerry Roberts' body locked when he saw him there. Jerry had spent the last 14 hours on his feet. 6 hours driving Uber. 4 hours stocking shelves at the warehouse. For more delivering groceries in the freezing rain. His back ached. His hands were raw. His daughter's school permission slip sat unsigned in his jacket pocket because he had forgotten it again, and the teacher's disappointed voice still echoed in his head. He was 34 years old and looked 50. His jeans had a hole in the knee. His coat was 2 sizes too big because it had been his late wife's father's. His hair needed cutting. His boots needed replacing. No one looked at Jerry Roberts twice. Except tonight, Juan Gonzalez was looking directly at him. "You're late," Juan said calmly, setting down a dish towel. His voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that made confessions happen and witnesses disappear. "Your daughter ate an hour ago. Chicken parmesan. She's sleeping now. I checked on her 10 minutes ago." Jerry's hand was still on the doorknob. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to grab his daughter, to call 911. But Juan wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a spatula. "I know what you're thinking," Juan continued, moving toward the small dining table where 2 plates sat waiting. "You're thinking this is a shakedown. A threat. You're thinking I'm here because you owe someone money, or because you saw something you shouldn't have, or because I've mistaken you for somebody else." Jerry's throat was too dry to speak. "You're wrong." Juan pulled out a chair, gestured for Jerry to sit. "I'm here because 15 years ago, your wife saved my life. And I never got to say thank you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jerry felt his knees weaken. He thought of Elena. Her night shifts at the emergency room. Her stories about the patients no one else wanted to treat. The ones without insurance. Without names. The ones who came in bleeding and left without a word. "Sit down, Jerry," Juan said, and for the first time, there was something soft in his voice. Something that sounded almost like grief. "We have a lot to talk about. And your dinner's getting cold." Jerry's keys slipped from his fingers twice before he could get them into the lock. Exhaustion did that, made simple things complicated. Made a man who used to install electrical systems for a living struggle with a basic deadbolt at midnight, except the deadbolt turned too easily. He froze, hand still on the knob. The lock was already disengaged. His mind, sluggish from 14 hours of work, suddenly sharpened into focus. He'd locked it this morning. He always locked it. 6 deadbolt checks before he left, sometimes 7, because his daughter was inside and the neighborhood wasn't the kind where you left doors open, not even by accident. Jerry pushed the door open slowly, his phone already halfway out of his pocket, 911 ready on speed dial. The hinges didn't creak. They always creaked. He'd been meaning to oil them for 3 months, had added it to a list of repairs so long he'd stopped looking at it because it only made him feel worse about everything he couldn't fix. But someone had fixed them. The apartment beyond the threshold wasn't his. Couldn't be his. The dying overhead light that flickered like a strobe at a sad disco was glowing steady and bright. The carpet, stained with 2 years of spilled juice boxes and his own tracked in mud, was clean. Not just surface clean. Deep clean. The kind where you could see the original beige color he'd forgotten existed. The stack of unpaid bills that had been breeding on the kitchen counter like desperate paper rabbits was gone. The mountain of dishes in the sink, 3 days' worth, because he kept meaning to wash them, kept running out of time, had vanished. In their place sat a ceramic pot with steam rising from it, and next to that, a loaf of bread that looked bakery fresh, still warm enough that he could smell it from the doorway. Jerry's heart was doing something between a sprint and a stumble. This was wrong. All of it. Break-ins didn't look like this. Burglars didn't clean. They took. They destroyed. They left chaos, not order. He stepped inside, every nerve screaming at him to grab Mia and run, but his legs carried him forward anyway, drawn by the sheer impossibility of what he was seeing. The ancient couch that sagged in the middle like a broken promise was still there, but someone had thrown a blanket over it, a nice blanket, the kind with actual weight and texture, not the thin clearance rack thing he'd been using. His daughter's toys, usually scattered like a bright plastic minefield across the floor, were organized in bins he didn't own. New bins. Clean bins. The TV, which only worked if you held the power button down for exactly 4 seconds while standing on your left foot and praying, was on. Playing softly. Some nature documentary about dolphins. Mia loved dolphins. She fell asleep watching it. Jerry spun so fast he nearly tripped over his own boots. His phone clattered to the floor. Juan Gonzalez stood in the hallway leading to the bedrooms, wiping his hands on a dish towel like this was normal. Like he belonged here. He'd taken off the apron Jerry had seen earlier, but there was still a dusting of what looked like flour on his sleeve. His expression was calm, almost gentle, but there was something in his eyes, something watchful and ancient and far too knowing. I turned the volume down 20 minutes ago, Juan continued, folding the towel with precise, measured movements. She fights sleep. Reminds me of my sister at that age. Stubborn. Jerry couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The most dangerous man in the city had just compared his daughter to family, and Jerry's brain was shorting out trying to process the wrongness of it, the terror, the absolute insanity of Juan Gonzalez talking about bedtime routines. If you've heard her, Jerry's voice came out raw, barely human. I made her dinner. Juan's tone didn't change, didn't rise to meet Jerry's panic. Chicken parmesan. She said her daddy makes it sometimes, but it's too crispy. I adjusted. She ate 2 pieces. Drank her milk. Brushed her teeth, she tried to skip it, but I told her cavities were no joke. She's fine, Jerry. She's safe. The use of his name, casual, familiar, made Jerry's skin crawl. He hadn't introduced himself. Hadn't needed to. Juan knew exactly who he was, where he lived, what his daughter ate for dinner, how she tried to negotiate out of basic hygiene. Why are you here? Jerry's hands were shaking. He shoved them into his pockets. What do you want? Juan moved into the kitchen, and Jerry's body tensed, ready to fight or flee or die trying if it meant Mia stayed safe. But Juan just picked up the pot, ladled something that smelled like his grandmother's cooking into a bowl, and set it on the table. Sit, Juan said. Not a command. An invitation. Almost a plea. I'm not sitting. I'm not eating. I'm not doing anything until you tell me why you're in my home. Jerry's voice cracked on the last word. Home. This place that was barely holding together, that he was 3 weeks behind on rent for, that had broken appliances and peeling paint and no business being on a crime lord's radar. Juan studied him for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket, Jerry flinched, and pulled out a photograph. Old. Creased. The colors faded the way photos got when they'd been carried for years, looked at often, worn soft with handling. He placed it on the table between them. Jerry didn't want to look. Looking meant stepping closer. Closer to Juan. Closer to whatever fresh nightmare this was turning into. But he looked anyway. The photo showed a young man, barely more than a kid, really unconscious on a hospital bed. His face was swollen, crusted with blood. And standing beside him, checking in four with competent, gentle hands, was Elena. His Elena. Younger. Her hair longer. Wearing scrubs with little cartoon bears on them, the ones she'd always said made her patients smile. 15 years ago, Juan said quietly, "Your wife saved my life." And I never forgot. Jerry stared at the photograph like it might burn him. Elena's face, frozen in time, smiling that small professional smile she used with patients who were scared. The smile that said, "You're safe now, I've got you." He'd seen that smile 1,000 times, usually right before she stayed up for another double shift because someone needed her. He hadn't seen it in 2 years. Not since the cancer took her in 6 brutal months that felt like both an eternity and no time at all. "I don't understand." The words came out hollow. Jerry's exhaustion was catching up to him, making everything feel surreal, like he'd walked into someone else's life. "You're telling me you knew Elena?" "She knew me when no one else wanted to." Juan moved back to the kitchen, and this time Jerry tracked his every movement with the hypervigilance of a man whose entire world had just tilted sideways. Juan picked up a mop, an actual mop, the good kind with the built-in wringer that Jerry had priced at the hardware store and couldn't afford, and returned to a spot near the refrigerator where apparently he'd been working before Jerry arrived. The city's most feared crime boss started mopping Jerry's kitchen floor. The absurdity of it would have been funny if Jerry wasn't so terrified. "I was 19, Juan said, working the mop in steady, practice strokes. Stupid. Thought I was bulletproof because I'd survived 2 years on the streets. I got into a fight with the wrong people over the wrong thing. They left me in an alley off Morrison with a knife in my gut and a fractured skull." He paused, wrung out the mop. "I woke up 3 days later in County General. Your wife was the nurse who found my name. Who called my sister. Who made sure I didn't die alone in a system that had already written me off." Jerry wanted to sit down. His legs were threatening to give out. But sitting meant accepting this, and he wasn't ready to accept that a mafia boss was in his apartment talking about Elena like she was a saint. Though she had been. That was the worst part. She absolutely would have done exactly what Juan described. "Most of the staff didn't want to touch me," Juan continued. "I came in as a John Doe. No insurance. No ID. Covered in gang tattoos and blood that wasn't all mine. I heard the doctors talking. They were going to stabilize me and dump me. But Elena." He said her name with a reverence that made Jerry's chest tight. "She stayed. 12-hour shifts turned into 16. She changed my bandages. Brought me food when I could eat. Talked to me about normal things. Books. Music. Her nursing school debt." One stopped mopping and looked directly at Jerry. His eyes were dark, unreadable, but there was something in them that looked almost like grief. "She told me I had a choice. She said everyone has a moment where they decide who they're going to be. She said I could go back to the streets and be dead before 25, or I could be something else. Something better." "You run half the organized crime in the city," Jerry said flatly. His fear was giving way to something harder, sharper. "Anger, maybe. Doesn't sound like you took her advice." Juan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I took her advice. She never said I had to be legal. She said I had to be better. So I learned. I got smart. I stopped being muscle and started being management. I built an empire, yes. But I built it with rules. No kids. No civilians. No unnecessary violence. I'm a monster, Jerry, but I'm a monster with a code, and that code exists because a nurse with cartoon bears on her scrubs told me I was worth saving." He returned to mopping, and Jerry noticed that the floor was already clean. Juan was just moving the mop for something to do with his hands. "When I heard she died." Juan's voice dropped lower. "I sent flowers. Anonymous. I thought about going to the funeral, but men like me don't belong in churches. So I watched from across the street. Saw you holding your daughter. Saw you crying. Saw you trying to be strong." He wrung out the mop again, harder this time. "And I saw you struggling. The jobs. The bills. The weight of doing it all alone." Jerry's hands clenched into fists. "So what? You felt guilty? Thought you'd break into my house and play fairy godmother. I thought I'd pay a debt." One set the mop aside, pulled out a chair, and sat down at Jerry's own kitchen table like he owned the place. Maybe he did. Maybe he owned the whole building. Jerry didn't know anymore. Elena gave me a chance when no one else would. She invested in me when I was worthless. And I never got to thank her. Never got to show her what I became. So I'm going to make sure her family never struggles. Her daughter never goes without. Her husband never has to work himself into an early grave. I'm not your charity case. Jerry's voice came out harder than he intended, defensive, because pride was about all he had left. No, Juan agreed. You're not. You're the family of the woman who saved my life. That makes you untouchable. That makes you mine to protect. He gestured to the apartment, the cleaned floors, the organized chaos. This is me saying thank you. This is me making sure Elena's sacrifice meant something. Jerry looked around his transformed home. At the clean surfaces and working lights and warm food. At the evidence of care that he hadn't been able to provide, that someone else had simply given. I don't want your money, he said, but even to his own ears it sounded weak. Juan stood, reached into his jacket, Jerry still flinched, and pulled out an envelope. He placed it next to the photograph of Elena. Then consider it hers, Juan said softly. She earned it 15 years ago. I'm just finally paying what I owe. Jerry didn't touch the envelope. Didn't even look at it. His eyes were locked on the photograph, on Elena's face, trying to reconcile the woman he'd loved with this secret piece of her life she'd never mentioned. She'd told him stories about her patients, the grateful ones, the difficult ones, the ones who made her laugh or broke her heart. But never this. Never Juan Gonzalez. She didn't tell you about me, Juan said, reading his silence. It wasn't a question. I'm not surprised. Elena had a way of keeping other people's secrets like they were sacred. Tell me. Jerry's voice was hoarse. He pulled out the chair across from Juan and finally sat, not because he trusted the man, but because his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. Tell me exactly what happened. All of it. Juan leaned back, his eyes going distant, focused on something 15 years gone. It was August. One of those heat waves where the asphalt melts and people start going crazy from the temperature. I was running with the cazadores then, you know them. Jerry shook his head. Good. They don't exist anymore. I made sure of that. Juan's expression darkened for just a moment, then smoothed. I was their youngest enforcer. Thought I was invincible. A rival crew, the Morrison Street Boys, they caught me alone outside a convenience store. 4 of them. They had a message to send, and I was it. He touched his side unconsciously, like the scar still ached after all these years. They beat me for 20 minutes. Broke 3 ribs, fractured my skull, punctured my lung with a cheap switchblade. Left me bleeding in the alley behind the store like garbage. The owner found me 6 hours later when he was taking out the trash. Juan's laugh was bitter. Fitting, right? I was literally with the garbage. Jerry's throat was tight. He imagined Elena in that emergency room, facing down a bloodied gang member while other staff looked the other way. It sounded exactly like something she would do. I woke up 3 days later, like I said. But what I didn't tell you is what Elena did during those 3 days. Juan pulled the photograph closer, touched Elena's face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man with his reputation. The police came. They always do with stabbings. They took one look at my tattoos, ran my prints, found my juvenile record. They wanted to question me the moment I woke up, arrest me probably. Elena refused. She what? Told them I was too unstable. That questioning me could cause a medical crisis. She used every regulation, every patient protection law she could find to keep them away from me. One detective got aggressive, threatened her license. She didn't blink. Just stood in that doorway and said, "You'll have to go through me." Jerry could see it. God help him, he could see Elena doing exactly that, small and fierce in her cartoon scrubs, protecting someone everyone else had given up on. When I finally woke up, she was there. First face I saw. Juan's voice went soft. She told me the police wanted to talk to me. Said she'd kept them away as long as she could, but they'd be back. Then she did something no one had ever done before. She asked me what I wanted. What did you say? I asked her why she cared. Why risk her job, her license, her safety for someone like me? Juan met Jerry's eyes. You know what she said? Jerry shook his head, but his eyes were burning. She said, because you're 19 and you're dying and someone should care about that. Juan's hands clenched on the table. Not because I deserved it. Not because I'd earned it. Just because I was human and I was suffering, and that was enough for her. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sirens outside. Always sirens in this neighborhood. She visited me every shift for 2 weeks. Brought me books because I was bored. Not prison books or street lit. Real books. Classics. She said if I was going to be stuck in bed, I might as well learn something. Juan smiled at the memory. We talked about everything, her dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner. My sister who was trying to finish high school. Normal things. Human things. She never once asked about the gang, about what I'd done, about why those men wanted me dead. She saw the person, not the crime, Jerry said quietly. It was something Elena used to say, her philosophy of care. Exactly. Juan's expression shifted, became harder. The cazadores came for me on day 16. Walked right into County General like they owned it. They wanted to finish what Morrison Street started, tie up loose ends. But Elena. He shook his head in wonder. She pulled the fire alarm. Evacuated the entire floor. In the chaos, she wheeled me out a service exit and hid me in a supply closet until security cleared the building. She saved your life twice. 3 times, Juan corrected. Because when it was safe, when the cazadores were gone and the police gave up on questioning me, she helped me disappear. Called my sister. Arranged for a discharge against medical advice. Gave me her own money, $200 she probably couldn't afford, and told me to get out of the city until I healed. Until I could think clearly about who I wanted to be. Jerry's vision blurred. This was Elena. Every word of it rang true. She'd always been like that, throwing herself between danger and the people who needed her, consequences be damned. I left, Juan continued. Went to my aunt's place upstate. Spent 6 months healing, thinking, reading those books Elena gave me. When I came back, I wasn't the same stupid kid. I was focused. Strategic. I took over the cazadores in 2 years, absorbed Morrison Street in 4, and built something bigger than all of them. And every single day, every decision I made, I thought about what Elena would say. What she would want me to be. A better monster, Jerry said. A monster who protects instead of destroys. One pushed the envelope across the table. She gave me a code when I had nothing. No one. Now her family has me. Whether you want it or not. Jerry looked at the envelope, at the photograph, at the man who had cleaned his home and fed his daughter and carried his wife's memory for 15 years. His hands were shaking when he finally picked up the envelope. If you were Jerry, could you accept help from someone like Juan? Drop your thoughts below, I read every comment. And subscribe. The envelope was thick. Too thick. Jerry's fingers trembled as he opened it, and what he found inside made his breath catch in his throat. Not cash. Documents. A lease agreement with paid in full, stamped across 12 months. Utility bills marked 0 balance. A receipt from Mia's school showing her tuition covered through the end of the academic year, including the after-school program Jerry had been trying to afford for 8 months. And beneath it all, a stack of bills rubber-banded together. Hundreds. More money than Jerry made in 3 months of killing himself across 3 jobs. He shoved it all back into the envelope like it had burned him. No. The word came out sharp, final. Jerry stood so fast his chair scraped against the clean floor. No. Absolutely not. You need to take this and leave. Now. Juan didn't move. Didn't even blink. He just sat there with that calm, unreadable expression that probably made criminals confess and rivals surrender. It's already done, Jerry. Then undo it. Jerry's voice was rising, panic and pride warring in his chest. I don't care what you think you owe Elena. I don't care about your code or your debt or whatever this is. I'm not taking money from a— He stopped himself, but barely. From a criminal? Juan finished for him, no heat in his voice. From a killer? From a man who built his empire on blood and fear. He tilted his head slightly. Say it. I've been called worse. Jerry's jaw clenched. I work for what I have. I provide for my daughter. I don't need— You're 3 weeks behind on rent, Juan interrupted quietly. Your landlord filed eviction paperwork yesterday. You have 14 days before the sheriff shows up to remove you and your daughter from this apartment. The air left Jerry's lungs. He'd known it was coming, had been dodging Mr. Castellanos's calls for a week, but hearing it said out loud made it real in a way that terrified him. Your electricity bill is 2 months overdue, Juan continued, his tone still maddeningly calm. You're on a payment plan with the water company. Your car needs a transmission repair you can't afford, which is why you've been Ubering with a vehicle that could die any day. Mia needs glasses, her teacher sent home a note about it 3 weeks ago, and you haven't scheduled the appointment because you don't have vision insurance. Each word was a punch to the gut. Jerry gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. How do you know all this? The question came out strangled. How long have you been watching us? 6 months. One said it like it was nothing, like stalking a widower and his child was perfectly reasonable. After Elena died, I kept track. Made sure you were managing. For a while, you were. Barely, but you were staying afloat. Then your transmission started slipping. You took the third job. Started sleeping 4 hours a night. I watched you run yourself into the ground trying to be everything Elena was, and I waited to see if you'd ask for help. I don't need help. You're drowning, Jerry. For the first time, there was an edge to Juan's voice. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment. You're a good father. A noble man. But you're one car breakdown away from losing everything, and your pride won't keep your daughter fed and housed. Jerry wanted to throw the envelope at him. Wanted to scream that he didn't ask for this. Didn't want a mafia boss playing guardian angel. Didn't need anyone's pity. But the words stuck in his throat because Juan was right. About all of it. Jerry was drowning. Had been drowning for months, and he'd been too stubborn, too ashamed to admit it even to himself. I can't accept this, he said finally, quietly. If I take your money, what does that make me? Elena's husband, Juan replied simply. The father of her child. A man smart enough to accept help when it's offered freely. Nothing is free. Not from someone like you. Jerry met his eyes. What do you want from me? What's the catch? Do I have to look the other way when your men do business in the neighborhood? Keep my mouth shut if I see something? Become complicit in, Juan held up a hand, and Jerry's words died. The gesture wasn't threatening, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. This was a man accustomed to silence when he demanded it. I want nothing from you, Juan said, each word deliberate. No favors. No debts. No silence or compliance or complicity. You live your life exactly as you have been, except now you sleep at night knowing your daughter has a roof over her head and food in her stomach. People don't do that. Not without strings. I'm not people. Juan stood, and even though Jerry was taller, he felt small in the man's presence. I'm a man who owes a debt to a woman who can't collect it. So I'm collecting for her. Making sure her sacrifice, saving me, believing in me, wasn't wasted on someone who'd let her family suffer when he could prevent it. Jerry shook his head, desperate. If people find out you're helping me, if your enemies think I'm connected to you, they already know. Juan's smile was thin, dangerous. Why do you think Mr. Castellanos hasn't knocked on your door personally? Why the collection agencies stopped calling last week? Why the kids who used to hang out on your stoop found somewhere else to loiter? He stepped closer. The moment I decided you were under my protection, everyone who matters got the message. You're safer now than you've been since you moved to this neighborhood. I didn't ask to be protected. Elena did. Juan picked up the photograph from the table, looked at it one more time, then set it down in front of Jerry. She made me promise. The last time I saw her. Jerry's heart stopped. What? 2 years ago. St. Mary's Hospital, room 347. I visited her 3 days before she died. Juan's voice went soft, heavy with old grief. She knew who I'd become, what I'd built. And she asked me to watch over you and Mia if anything happened to her. Made me swear it on my sister's life. The room tilted. Jerry gripped the table harder. So you see, Juan continued, this isn't charity. It's a promise to a dying woman. And I don't break my promises. He walked toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. The rent is paid. The bills are settled. My men will make sure it stays that way. Fight me if you want, Jerry. But you won't win. And your daughter deserves better than watching her father's pride destroy them both. Then he was gone, leaving Jerry alone with an envelope full of impossible choices and the ghost of his wife's final wish. Jerry didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table until dawn, staring at the envelope he couldn't bring himself to open again, listening to Mia's soft breathing from the bedroom. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Elena in that hospital room, making Juan Gonzalez promise to protect a family she'd have to leave behind. She'd known. Even at the end, even drowning in pain and medication, she'd been thinking 3 moves ahead, making sure her husband's pride wouldn't destroy what was left of their family. It made him love her more. It made him furious with her. It made him want to scream and cry and thank her all at once. When morning came, Jerry went through the motions. Made Mia breakfast, real breakfast, eggs and toast, not the usual cereal because the refrigerator was suddenly stocked with food he hadn't bought. Walked her to the bus stop. Kissed her forehead and told her he loved her, same as always. But everything had changed. Mrs. Chin noticed first. She ran the corner store where Jerry bought lottery tickets he never won and coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. She was sweeping her stoop when Jerry walked past, and she stared at him like he'd grown a second head. "Mr. Jerry," she said carefully, her accent thick with something that sounded like fear. You okay? No trouble." "I'm fine, Mrs. Chen." "Why?" She glanced past him toward his building, then back to his face. "The cars. Last night. Very expensive cars. Black SUVs. Men in suits." She lowered her voice. "Gonzalez men." The name hung in the air between them like a curse. Jerry's stomach dropped. "I don't know what you're talking about. 3 of them. Parked outside your building for 2 hours. Watching. Making sure everyone saw them watching." Mrs. Chen's eyes were wide, worried. "Mr. Jerry, if you in trouble, if you owe money to bad people, I don't owe anyone anything." The lie tasted bitter. He owed Juan Gonzalez more than he could ever repay, and apparently the entire neighborhood was going to know it. By noon, the whispers had spread like wildfire. Jerry's phone buzzed with texts from people he barely knew. His cousin in Newark asking if he was safe. A former coworker wanting to know if the rumors were true. Even his landlord, Mr. Castellanos, sent a message that was almost deferential. "No rush on the rent, Mr. Roberts. Take your time. We're all good here. We're all good here." 3 weeks ago, the man had been threatening eviction. Now he was telling Jerry to take his time. Because Juan's men had made it clear that Jerry Roberts was untouchable. The power shift was instant and absolute. Jerry stopped at the bodega for milk, actual milk, because he could afford it now, because his utilities were paid and his rent was covered, and he had cash in an envelope he still hadn't touched. The owner, Miguel, usually charged him an extra 50 cents on everything because he knew Jerry wouldn't argue. Today, Miguel rang him up and then pushed $1 back across the counter. "On the house," he said, not meeting Jerry's eyes. "Miguel, it's just milk, please, Mr. Roberts." "On the house." There was something in Miguel's voice that Jerry had never heard before. Respect. Or maybe fear. He couldn't tell the difference anymore. On his way home, Jerry saw Marcus and his crew on the corner. They'd been there for months, dealing in broad daylight because the cops didn't care and no one had the power to make them leave. Marcus used to hassle Jerry for walking through their territory, demanding a toll like this was medieval times. Today, Marcus and his boys scattered the moment Jerry turned the corner. Literally scattered, like roaches when the light comes on. One of them dropped his phone in his rush to get away. Jerry stood alone on the corner, where he used to be threatened weekly, and the silence was deafening. By evening, when he picked Mia up from the after-school program, the one he could suddenly afford, the one she'd been begging to join so she could do art classes with her friends, the program director greeted him with a smile so bright it looked painful. "Mr. Roberts. So wonderful that Mia can join us now. And thank you so much for the generous donation to our supplies fund. The children will get so much use out of those new art materials." Jerry hadn't donated anything. But he nodded anyway, because what else could he do? Juan's money was everywhere now, invisible threads connecting Jerry to a world he wanted no part of. When they got home, Mrs. Kowalski from 3B was waiting in the hallway. She was 83 and mostly deaf, which meant she usually yelled everything at full volume. Today, she practically whispered, "Jerry, dear, I just wanted to say, if you ever need anything, anything at all, I'm here." She patted his arm. "It's good to have friends. Important friends. You take care of that sweet girl, you hear?" She shuffled away before he could respond. Inside the apartment, Mia ran to her room to change, and Jerry stood in his impossibly clean kitchen, looking at the gleaming counters and the full refrigerator and the working lights, and felt like a stranger in his own life. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. "The neighborhood understands now. No one will bother you or your daughter. You're under protection." This is what Elena wanted. Jerry deleted the message. Then he sat on his couch, his sagging, broken couch that someone had tried to make comfortable with an expensive blanket, and put his head in his hands. The kids who used to key cars on his block were gone. The dealers had found new corners. His neighbors looked at him with a mixture of awe and terror. Mr. Castellanos was suddenly his best friend. Miguel gave him discounts. All because a crime lord had decided Jerry Roberts mattered. He'd wanted to provide for Mia through honest work, through the sweat of his brow and the strength of his character. He'd wanted to be the kind of father who needed no one, who could stand alone against the world. Instead, he was the man under Juan Gonzalez's protection. The man whose daughter was safe because a killer had made it so. When Mia emerged from her room in her art-stained t-shirt, chattering about the clay project she was going to make tomorrow, Jerry pulled her into a hug and held on too tight. "Daddy, you're squishing me," she giggled. "Sorry, baby. Just love you. Love you too. Are you okay?" "No," he wanted to say. "Nothing is okay. Our whole world just changed and you don't even know it." "I'm fine," he said instead. "Just tired." Outside, a black SUV drove slowly past his building. A reminder. A promise. A prison with invisible bars. Has Jerry gained safety or lost his freedom? What would you do in his position? Let me know below. It happened on a Thursday. Jerry was attempting to fix the kitchen sink, which had mysteriously started working perfectly after Juan's visit, but had now developed a minor drip when he heard Mia's voice in the hallway. She was talking to someone, her tone bright and animated in the way it only got when she was truly excited about something. Jerry's stomach dropped. He knew that voice in the hallway. Had heard it offering calm explanations while holding a mop. Had heard it recounting how Elena saved a dying boy in an emergency room. He reached the door just as Mia pushed it open, chattering away. "And then Sophie said her hamster could do tricks, but I said that's not real tricks, that's just the hamster being hungry, and she got mad, but I was right, wasn't I? You can't train a hamster to do actual," she paused, noticing Jerry frozen in the doorway. "Oh, hi, Daddy. Look who I found in the hallway." Juan Gonzalez stood behind his 7-year-old daughter, carrying 2 bags of groceries and wearing an expression Jerry had never seen on him before. Uncomfortable. Almost sheepish. Like he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't. "Mr. Gonzalez was bringing us food," Mia announced proudly. "He said he was in the neighborhood and thought we might need some things. I told him you went shopping yesterday, but he said you can never have too much fruit, and I said that's true because you always forget to buy the good grapes, the green ones, not the purple ones that taste weird." Jerry's brain was short-circuiting. His daughter, his careful, cautious daughter who'd been taught about stranger danger since she could talk, was treating a mafia boss like a beloved uncle who'd stopped by for a casual visit. "Mia," Jerry said carefully, "why don't you go wash up? We'll have a snack in a minute. But Mr. Gonzalez, now please." Something in his tone made her pause. She looked between the two men, her smile faltering slightly, then nodded and disappeared into the bathroom. The moment she was gone, Jerry's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "What are you doing here?" "Bringing groceries." Juan held up the bags like evidence. "You were running low on, you can't be here." "Not when she's home. Not when she can see you." Jerry's heart was hammering. "Do you understand what you are? What people know you for? If she tells someone at school that Juan Gonzalez brings us groceries, she doesn't know who I am." Juan's voice was quiet, maddeningly calm. To her, I'm just Mr. Gonzalez from the neighborhood. A friend of her mother's. Someone who helps out sometimes. She's 7, not stupid. Eventually, she'll hear your name somewhere. Make the connection. Then I'll deal with it then. Juan moved past Jerry into the kitchen, began unpacking groceries with the same methodical precision he probably used to plan criminal enterprises. Right now, she's a child who needs fruit and someone who remembers to buy the green grapes. Jerry wanted to grab the bags and throw them out. Wanted to physically remove Juan from his home and his daughter's life. But Mia emerged from the bathroom before he could do anything, and her face lit up when she saw Juan still there. You stayed. She climbed onto one of the kitchen chairs, chin propped on her hands. Are you staying for snack time? Daddy makes okay snacks, but he always cuts the apples too big, and I can't fit them in my mouth. Juan glanced at Jerry, a question in his eyes. Jerry wanted to say no. Wanted to tell Mia that Mr. Gonzalez had to leave, had important business, could never come back. But his daughter was smiling for the first time in days, really smiling, not the careful version she used when she was worried about him, and Jerry found himself nodding instead. Small pieces, Mia instructed Juan seriously. And if there's peanut butter, not too much because it gets stuck on the roof of your mouth. Daddy always uses too much. I'll remember that. Juan pulled out an apple, a cutting board, and began slicing with the precision of a man who knew his way around a knife. For all the wrong reasons, probably, but Mia didn't know that. She chattered while he worked, the same endless stream of 7-year-old consciousness that Jerry usually only half listened to after a long day. But Juan paid attention to every word. Asked follow-up questions about Sophie and the hamster situation. Wanted to know more about the art project she was making. Listened with genuine interest when she explained, in exhaustive detail, the complex social dynamics of second-grade lunch tables. Jerry watched from the doorway, unable to look away from the surreal scene. A man whose face appeared on wanted posters was arranging apple slices into a smiley face on his daughter's plate. A man who'd built an empire on violence and fear was nodding solemnly as Mia explained why purple grapes were objectively inferior to green ones. Did you know my mommy? Mia asked suddenly, in that way children had of asking devastating questions like they were discussing the weather. Juan's hands stilled on the cutting board. I did. A long time ago. Was she nice to you too? The nicest. Juan's voice went soft. She helped me when I was hurt. Took care of me when no one else would. Mia nodded like this made perfect sense. She was good at that. Taking care of people. Daddy says that's why she was a nurse, because she had a big heart. She paused, swinging her legs under the chair. I don't remember her very much anymore. Just little things. Like how she smelled like vanilla. And how she sang off-key but didn't care. Jerry's throat closed up. He'd known Mia's memories of Elena were fading. She'd only been 5 when Elena died, but hearing her say it out loud broke something in his chest. She had terrible pitch, Juan agreed, and there was a smile in his voice. Used to sing to the patients sometimes. They never had the heart to tell her. Really? Mia's eyes went wide. Really? She sang me this old Spanish lullaby once. Got half the words wrong and couldn't hit a single note properly. Juan set the plate in front of her. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. Mia picked up an apple slice, studying Juan with the frank curiosity of childhood. Are you my guardian angel? Like in the stories. Juan looked stricken, like the question had physically hurt him. No, Pequeña. I'm not an angel. But you bring us food. And you knew my mommy. And you make Daddy less worried. She said it so simply, so matter-of-factly. That sounds like a guardian angel to me. Jerry watched Juan Gonzalez, a man who'd ordered executions, who'd built a criminal empire, who'd made hardened criminals weep, struggled to find words for a 7-year-old who thought he hung the moon. I'm just someone who owed your mother a debt, Juan finally said. And I'm making sure it gets paid. Okay, Mia said agreeably, because 7-year-olds accepted explanations that adults would question. She took a bite of apple. These are perfect, by the way. Not too big at all. Juan's smile was small, almost invisible, but it transformed his face into something Jerry had never seen before. Something human. Something that looked almost like joy. And Jerry realized with cold certainty that this was going to be so much more complicated than money and protection. Because his daughter had just claimed a piece of Juan Gonzalez's heart, and men like Juan didn't know how to protect their hearts without destroying everything around them. "Thank you for the snack, Mr. Gonzalez," Mia said politely when she finished. "You're welcome, Mia." Juan stood, cleaned up the cutting board with the same care he'd used preparing the food. "I should go. Will you come back?" The question was innocent, hopeful. Juan looked at Jerry. Really looked at him, and for the first time, Jerry saw the question beneath the confidence. The permission being asked, every instinct screamed at Jerry to say no. To protect his daughter from this dangerous connection. To slam the door on this impossible situation before it consumed them both. But Mia was smiling. And Juan had cut the apples into perfect pieces. And Elena had asked him to watch over them. "He knows where we live," Jerry said finally, and it wasn't quite permission, but it wasn't rejection either. It was enough. The men came on a Tuesday night while Jerry was walking home from his shift at the warehouse. He'd kept the job even though he didn't technically need it anymore, because accepting Juan's money for rent and bills was one thing, but quitting work entirely felt like surrender. Like admitting he couldn't stand on his own 2 feet. Pride was expensive. Jerry was learning that the hard way. He was 2 blocks from his apartment, cutting through the alley behind the old laundromat because it shaved 3 minutes off his walk, and 3 minutes meant 3 more minutes with Mia before bedtime, when the black sedan pulled up behind him. Not one of Juan's cars. Jerry had learned to recognize those, sleek, well-maintained, windows tinted just dark enough to be legal. This car was different. Older. Louder. The muffler making a sound like a threat. 3 men got out before Jerry could react. They didn't run. Didn't rush. Just walked toward him with the casual confidence of people who knew their prey had nowhere to go. The alley was a dead end behind him, a chain-link fence too high to climb quickly, and the laundromat had closed an hour ago. Jerry's hand went to his phone, but the closest man, tall, with a scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw, shook his head slowly. "I wouldn't." His voice was surprisingly soft. Almost friendly. Which somehow made it worse. "We're just here to talk. I don't know you." Jerry's heart was slamming against his ribs, but he kept his voice steady. "And I don't have anything worth taking." "Oh, we know exactly what you have." The second man stepped forward, shorter, but built like he spent his life in a gym. "You have Juan Gonzalez's attention. His protection. His resources." He smiled, and it was all teeth. "That makes you very interesting to certain people." Jerry's blood went cold. This was it. The price Juan had promised wouldn't exist. The consequences of being associated with a man whose enemies were as numerous as his crimes. "I'm nobody," Jerry said carefully. "Just a guy trying to get home to his kid. Whatever you think I am to Gonzalez, we know exactly what you are." The third man spoke for the first time, his accent thick, Eastern European maybe. "You are the weak point. The soft spot. The thing that makes a monster vulnerable." He pulled out a knife, not threatening with it yet, just letting Jerry see it. Letting him understand. "So here is message. You tell Gonzalez that the Volkov brothers do not forget. Do not forgive. He took something from us, so we take something from him. I don't even know what he took from you, territory. Money. Respect." Scarface moved closer, and Jerry backed up until he hit the fence. 3 of our operations shut down in 1 month. Our people arrested or disappeared. All because Gonzalez decided to expand into our neighborhoods. He leaned in, close enough that Jerry could smell cigarettes and something chemical on his breath. "So you tell him, back off, or we start making things personal." "I'm not his messenger." Jerry's voice shook despite his best efforts. "I barely know the man. He knew my wife, that's all." "I can't tell him anything." The punch came without warning, catching Jerry in the stomach and driving all the air from his lungs. He doubled over, gasping, and someone grabbed his hair, yanked his head back. "You think we're stupid?" The gym rat had his face inches from Jerry's. "The whole neighborhood knows you're under his protection. His men outside your building. His money paying your bills. You're either his weakness or his spy, and either way, you're going to deliver our message." They hit him twice more, ribs, kidney, professional strikes designed to hurt without leaving visible damage, and Jerry's vision blurred with pain. He thought of Mia, asleep at home with Mrs. Kowalski babysitting. Thought of her waking up to police at the door, telling her that her daddy wasn't coming home. That she was alone again. The knife pressed against his cheek, cold and sharp. Tell Gonzalez, the gunshot was so loud in the enclosed alley that Jerry's ears rang. The man with the knife staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, the blade clattering to the ground. The other two spun around, reaching for weapons, but froze when they saw what Jerry couldn't see from his position against the fence. Gentlemen. Juan's voice cut through the ringing in Jerry's ears, calm and cold as winter. You're making a mistake. Jerry twisted, still struggling to breathe, and saw Juan standing at the mouth of the alley with 4 men behind him. All armed. All pointed at the Volkov brothers with the kind of stillness that came before violence. Gonzalez. Scarface tried to sound confident, but his hand shook as he raised it in a placating gesture. This is just business. A message. No permanent damage. You put your hands on what's mine. Juan walked forward slowly, each step deliberate. You threatened a man under my protection. Pulled a knife on someone who has nothing to do with our world. He stopped 5 feet away, and even injured and terrified, Jerry could feel the temperature in the alley drop. That's not business. That's suicide. We didn't know he was that important, everyone knows. Juan's voice could have cut glass. I made sure everyone knew. Which means you came here knowing exactly what would happen. Which means this wasn't a message to me. This was a test. You wanted to see if I'd really go to war over a nobody. Over a widower and his little girl. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. So let me answer your question, Juan continued. Yes, I will burn your organization to the ground. I will scatter your people to the winds. I will make the Volkov name something parents use to scare children. And I will do it all because you touched him. He gestured to Jerry without looking away from the 3 men. Because 15 years ago, someone showed me mercy when I deserved none, and her husband and daughter are untouchable. Sacred. Do you understand? Scarface nodded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. I asked if you understand. Yes, we understand. It won't happen again. No, Juan agreed. It won't. Because you're going to go back to your brothers and tell them exactly what happened here. Tell them Jerry Roberts is off limits. Tell them his daughter is off limits. Tell them this neighborhood, this building, this entire city block belongs to me now, and anyone who forgets that will have a very short memory. He nodded to his men. 2 of them moved forward, disarmed the 3 Volkov soldiers with efficient, practiced movements. Took their phones, their weapons, their dignity. You can walk out of here, Juan said. But if I ever see you within 5 blocks of Jerry's home, if I ever hear you spoke his name again, if you even think about him too hard, I'll know. And what happens next won't be a conversation. They left, stumbling over each other in their rush to get to their car, the wounded one leaving a trail of blood that would stain the concrete for weeks. Then Juan was kneeling beside Jerry, hands surprisingly gentle as he checked for serious damage. Can you stand? Jerry nodded, though his ribs screamed in protest when Juan helped him up. You didn't have to, yes, I did. Juan's expression was hard, but his touch remained careful. This is what protection means, Jerry. It's not just money and clean floors. It's making sure everyone knows that touching you is touching me, that hurting you is a death sentence. I didn't ask for this. Jerry's voice broke. I didn't ask to be the weak point. The thing that makes you vulnerable. You're not my weakness. Juan met his eyes, and there was something fierce in his gaze. Something that looked almost like family. You're my honor. The proof that I'm not just the monster everyone thinks I am. That I can protect something good instead of destroying it. He steadied Jerry, made sure he could walk. And I will kill anyone who threatens that. Anyone who threatens you or Mia. Do you understand? Jerry understood. God help him, he understood perfectly. He'd been claimed by something bigger and darker than he could fight. And the terrifying part was that somewhere in the fear and the pain and the absolute insanity of his life now, he was grateful. Because those men would have killed him. And Juan had stopped them. Let's get you home, Juan said quietly. Mia will be worried if you're late. Jerry made it through the front door. Made it past Mrs. Kowalski's concerned questions with a smile that felt like it might crack his face in half. Made it through tucking Mia into bed and reading her favorite story about the brave little mouse, his voice steady even though his hands shook when he turned the pages. "Daddy, you smell funny," Mia mumbled sleepily. "Like outside." "Just worked late, baby. Go to sleep." "Love you, Daddy." "Love you too, Mia Mouse." He made it to the bathroom, closed the door, turned on the shower to cover the sound. And then Jerry Roberts, who'd held himself together through his wife's 6-month death sentence, through the funeral where Mia cried herself sick, through 2 years of drowning in bills and exhaustion, and the crushing weight of doing it all alone, finally broke. It started as shaking. His hands first, then his whole body, tremors he couldn't control even when he pressed his palms against the sink. The face in the mirror looked like a stranger, bruises already forming on his ribs. Split lip from where he'd bitten down during the beating. Eyes that had seen too much, held too much, carried too much for too long. The first sob caught him by surprise. It tore out of his chest like something physical, like his body was trying to expel 2 years of grief and fear and desperate, bone-deep exhaustion. He slid down the bathroom wall, pressed his face against his knees, and let it come. He cried for Elena. For the future they'd planned that cancer had stolen. For the way she used to sing off-key in the kitchen and make terrible puns that only she found funny. For the last conversation they'd had when she was still lucid, when she'd squeezed his hand and whispered, "You're going to be okay," like she was the one who needed comforting. He cried for Mia, who was forgetting her mother's face, who drew pictures of their family with a blank space where Elena should be because the memories were fading and Jerry didn't know how to hold them for her. He cried for himself. For the man he used to be, who'd had plans and dreams and a future that made sense. Who'd believed that hard work and good intentions were enough. Who'd thought he could do it all alone because asking for help felt like failure. The sobs came harder, uglier, the kind of crying that left him gasping for air. His ribs screamed where the Volkov brothers had hit him, but the physical pain was almost a relief compared to the rawness in his chest. The wound that had been festering for 2 years finally torn open. He didn't hear the front door. Didn't hear footsteps in the hallway. Only realized he wasn't alone when someone knocked softly on the bathroom door. "Jerry." Juan's voice, quiet but unmistakable. "I'm coming in." "Go away." The words came out broken, barely intelligible. The door opened anyway. Juan stepped inside, closed it behind him, and without a word, slid down the wall to sit beside Jerry on the bathroom floor. A man in a $3,000 suit sitting on cheap linoleum like it was the most natural thing in the world. They sat in silence for a long moment, just the sound of Jerry's ragged breathing and the shower still running, wasting water he could now afford to waste. "When my sister died," Juan said finally, "I didn't cry at the funeral. Didn't cry at the hospital. Didn't cry for 6 months. I thought it made me strong. Thought it meant I was handling it." He stared at the opposite wall. "Then one day I was making coffee and I used her favorite mug without thinking, and I lost it. Destroyed my kitchen. Put my fist through a wall. Scared my men so badly they thought I was having a breakdown." Jerry's breathing hitched. "Were you?" "Yes." Juan's voice was soft. "I was. Because grief doesn't care about your timeline. It doesn't care if you're too busy or too proud or too afraid to feel it. It waits. And when it comes, it breaks you whether you're ready or not. I can't afford to break." Jerry wiped his face with shaking hands. "Mia needs me. I have to be strong for her. You are strong for her. Every single day." Juan shifted slightly, and Jerry felt something being pressed into his hand. A handkerchief. Actual cloth, monogrammed. The kind of thing Jerry thought only existed in movies. But even the strong break sometimes. And that's when you need someone to sit with you while you do. Jerry pressed the handkerchief to his face, and something in him crumbled further. Because when had anyone last sat with him? Last asked if he was okay? Last given him permission to fall apart? "I miss her." The words ripped out of him. "I miss her so much it feels like dying. And I'm so angry at her for leaving, for making me promise I'd be okay, for asking you to watch over us like she knew I couldn't do it alone. And I hate that she was right. I hate that I need your help. I hate that I'm sitting on my bathroom floor crying in front of a man I barely know because I have no one else." "You have me now," Juan said simply. "Whether you want to or not." Jerry laughed, and it came out more like a sob. You're a criminal. A killer. Everything I should keep my daughter away from. Yes, Juan agreed. I am all those things. I'm also the man your wife trusted enough to ask for help. The man who's making sure Mia has food and safety and a future. The man sitting on your bathroom floor at midnight because you shouldn't have to break alone. The words hit Jerry somewhere deep, somewhere he'd been protecting since Elena died, because letting anyone in felt like betrayal. Like admitting she was really gone and not coming back. I don't know how to do this, Jerry whispered. How to be both parents. How to keep her safe and happy and normal when nothing is normal anymore. How to accept help from you without losing myself in the process. You do it one day at a time. Juan's shoulder pressed against his, solid and steady. You wake up. You make breakfast. You get her to school. You let me pay the rent and keep the predators away. You let yourself be human instead of superhuman. And on the days when it's too much, when you break, you let someone sit with you until you can stand again. Jerry turned to look at him, this impossible contradiction of a man. Monster and guardian. Killer and protector. The answer to prayers Jerry had been too proud to pray. Elena really asked you to do this? To watch over us. She made me swear on everything I hold sacred. Juan's expression softened with old grief. She said Mia would need a protector, and you would need a friend, even if you were too stubborn to admit it. She knew you, Jerry. Knew you'd try to carry everything alone. Knew you'd refuse help until it killed you. She was always too smart for her own good. She was smart enough to save me twice. Once in that hospital, and once when she made me promise to save you. Juan stood, offered his hand. Come on. The floor is terrible for your back, and you've cried enough for one night. Jerry let himself be pulled up, his ribs protesting, but his chest somehow lighter than it had been in months. He caught his reflection in the mirror, red-eyed, broken, bruised, and for the first time since Elena died, he didn't look away from his own brokenness. Thank you, he said quietly. For staying. For not leaving me alone with this. Elena made me promise I wouldn't. Juan turned off the shower that had been running throughout the breakdown, wasting gallons of water neither of them had noticed. Besides, you're not alone anymore. You have me. Whether you like it or not. Jerry almost smiled. I'm starting to think I might. Good. Juan moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. Get some sleep, Jerry. Tomorrow Mia has her field trip, and she'll want you to remember to pack the green grapes, not the purple ones. He left Jerry standing in the bathroom, exhausted and emptied and somehow, impossibly, feeling like maybe, just maybe, he could breathe again. Outside, in the dark city that Juan Gonzalez ruled with an iron fist and a code of honor, the black SUVs kept their watch. Protecting a widower and his daughter. Making sure the promise to a dying nurse stayed sacred. And in a small bathroom in a run-down apartment, Jerry Roberts washed his face, put on pajamas, and slept through the night for the first time in 2 years. When was the last time someone sat with you in your breaking? Share your story below. You're not alone, and subscribe. 3 months later, Jerry stopped flinching when the black SUVs pulled up outside his building. Started recognizing the drivers, Marco, who had a daughter Mia's age and always asked about her art projects, Dimitri, who once helped Jerry carry groceries up 4 flights when the elevator broke, Carlos, who slipped Mia candy and pretended Jerry didn't notice. They weren't just guards anymore. They were the neighborhood fixture, as permanent as the bodega on the corner or Mrs. Chen's flower boxes. The new normal. Jerry had quit 2 of his 3 jobs. Kept the warehouse work because it turned out he actually liked it when he wasn't doing it out of desperation, when his body didn't ache from exhaustion and his mind wasn't constantly calculating which bill to pay late this month. He came home at reasonable hours now. Had dinner with Mia. Helped with homework. Read bedtime stories without falling asleep mid-sentence. It felt like a different life. It felt like living instead of just surviving. Juan came by every Thursday. It had become routine somewhere along the way, this bizarre weekly dinner where a crime lord sat at Jerry's modest table and listened to a 7-year-old explain the intricate politics of second-grade friendships. He always brought something, groceries, books for Mia, once a new winter coat for Jerry that probably cost more than Jerry used to make in a month. You don't have to keep bringing things, Jerry said one Thursday, watching Juan unpack what looked like half an Italian bakery. I know. Juan arranged cannoli on a plate with the same precision he probably used to plan operations. I want to. Mia burst into the kitchen, waving a paper with a gold star on it. Mr. Juan. Look. I got 100 on my spelling test. All the words right, even the hard ones like necessary and separate. That's because you studied. Juan examined the test with appropriate seriousness. I'm proud of you, Pequeña. She beamed, and Jerry watched his daughter glow under the praise of a man whose approval meant life or death in certain circles. The cognitive dissonance should have been jarring. Somehow, it wasn't anymore. After dinner, after Mia was in bed clutching the new stuffed dolphin Juan had found for her, Jerry and Juan sat in the living room with coffee. The good coffee Juan brought because he declared Jerry's grocery store brand an insult to beans everywhere. I talked to my landlord today, Jerry said, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. He wants to sell the building. Juan's expression didn't change. I know. I'm buying it. Jerry should have been surprised. Wasn't. Of course you are. Your rent won't change. Neither will anyone else's. But the building needs work, new pipes, better heat, actual security doors. I'll make sure it gets done properly. Juan sipped his coffee. You and Mia deserve to live somewhere that doesn't fall apart every winter. You can't just buy every building I live in. Watch me. There was a hint of amusement in Juan's voice. Besides, it's a good investment. Property values in this neighborhood are rising. Something about decreased crime rates and improved safety. Jerry snorted. Wonder what caused that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Jerry marveled at how this had become normal. Coffee with a kingpin. Casual conversations about real estate with a man who probably had people killed before breakfast. His daughter calling a crime boss Mr. Juan and getting tucked in with stuffed animals bought with blood money. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. I went to Elena's grave last week, Jerry said quietly. First time in months. I told her about you. About all of this. He stared into his coffee. I think she'd be happy. That you kept your promise. That Mia's safe and thriving and doesn't remember what it was like when we were drowning. She'd be proud of you, Juan replied. For letting someone help. For being strong enough to accept support instead of destroying yourself trying to do everything alone. I'm still not comfortable with where the help comes from. I know. But you're accepting it anyway. That's growth. Juan set down his cup. Jerry, I need to tell you something. The serious tone made Jerry tense. What? The Volkov brothers. The ones who attacked you. Juan's expression hardened. They're no longer a problem. For you or anyone else in this city. Jerry's stomach dropped. He knew what that meant. Knew exactly what no longer a problem translated to in Juan's world. You didn't have to, yes, I did. Juan's voice was flat, absolute. They put their hands on you. Threatened everything Elena asked me to protect. There are consequences for that. Permanent ones. Jerry should have been horrified. Should have felt sick knowing that men had died because of him, because he'd become important to someone powerful enough to make people disappear. Instead, he felt safe. And that scared him more than anything. Does that make me a bad person? Jerry asked. That I'm glad they're gone? That I'm relieved my daughter won't grow up in a world where those men exist to hurt us. It makes you a father. Juan stood, preparing to leave like he always did around 9, before it got too late, before anyone could accuse him of overstaying. Fathers protect their children however they can. You do it with love and stability and bedtime stories. I do it with money and influence and sometimes violence. We're not the same, but we want the same thing for Mia to be safe and happy and whole. At the door, Juan paused. Elena asked me to watch over you both. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a debt. You've become family, Jerry. You and Mia both. And I protect my family. Jerry's throat was tight. Even though I'm just some guy? Just a widower you don't actually owe anything to. You're the husband of the woman who saved my life. The father of a little girl who thinks I'm better than I am. The first person in 15 years to treat me like I'm human instead of just a monster. Juan's expression softened. So no, you're not just some guy. You're proof that Elena's faith in me wasn't misplaced. That I can protect something instead of destroying it. After Juan left, Jerry checked on Mia like he did every night. She was sprawled across her bed, dolphin clutched tight, her breathing deep and even. Safe. Federal happy. Loved. The apartment was quiet. Clean. Warm. The refrigerator was full. The bills were paid. The dangerous men who'd threatened them were gone. And outside, Marco sat in his SUV, a silent guardian making sure nothing and no one would ever hurt the people sleeping inside. Jerry climbed into a new bed, because Juan had noticed the old one sagged and simply had a better one delivered, and stared at the ceiling. Thought about Elena in her hospital scrubs, saving a dying boy because that's what she did. Saving people. Believing in second chances. She'd saved Juan Gonzalez and changed the trajectory of his entire life. And 15 years later, Juan was saving Jerry, honoring a promise to a woman who'd seen humanity in a monster. The world was more complicated than Jerry had ever imagined. Good people did bad things. Bad people did good things. Monsters could be guardians. And sometimes accepting help from the wrong person was exactly the right choice. Jerry's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that he now recognized. Sleep well. Mia has a math test tomorrow. She's ready for it. You both are. Jerry smiled, set the phone aside, and closed his eyes. For the first time since Elena died, he slept soundly. Deeply. Without nightmares of evictions or empty refrigerators or his daughter crying because Daddy was never home. Because somewhere in this complicated, messy, impossible new normal, Jerry had found what Elena promised he would find: a village. A protector. A friend. A monster who'd chosen to be their guardian angel. And in the morning, Jerry would wake up and make Mia breakfast. Would help her review for her math test. Would kiss her forehead and send her off to school in clothes that fit and shoes without holes. Would live the life Elena had died trying to secure for them. Outside, the city woke up to Juan Gonzalez's empire, feared by criminals, watched by police, whispered about in corners where dangerous men made dangerous plans. But in a modest apartment in a building Juan now owned, a father and daughter slept peacefully. Safe. Protected. Loved by a monster who'd learned what it meant to be human from a nurse with cartoon bears on her scrubs and a heart big enough to save everyone. Even the ones who didn't deserve it. Especially the ones who didn't deserve it. And that made all the difference. Thank you for listening until the very end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the story. There's another story like the one you just enjoyed on your left screen.